AITA for taking back my card after my wife called me her walking debit card? I'm Noah, 36, and when this happened, Cassidy and I had been married for 7 years. For most of those 7 years, I thought I was the calm one in our marriage. That was the story I told myself, anyway. I was the guy who made the reservations when Cassidy forgot. I kept an extra phone charger in the car because she never remembered hers. I handled the awkward calls when a bill was wrong, made sure the groceries got ordered before we ran out of everything at once, and usually carried the bags because it was faster than turning every little thing into a discussion. None of that bothered me by itself. I loved taking care of things for the person I loved. What started bothering me was the way Cassidy slowly turned those things into proof that I was somehow less of a husband and more of a service she had figured out how to operate. It did not happen overnight. When we first got together, I loved her confidence. Cassidy could walk into a room full of strangers and leave with 3 new friends and an invitation to something the following weekend. She was funny without trying too hard. She remembered little details about people. She could make a boring dinner feel like an event. For years, that energy was one of the things I loved most about her. Then, little by little, her jokes started landing on me instead of around me. At first they were harmless enough. If I reminded her that we had plans at 7, she would grin and say, "See? This is why I married him." Human calendar. If I picked up the check after dinner, she would tell her friends, "No one needs to feel useful." If I asked whether we really needed to add another expensive activity to an already expensive weekend, she would roll her eyes and say, "Here comes the financial committee." I laughed along because everyone else did. That turned out to be a mistake. Once people learn you will laugh at your own disrespect to keep the room comfortable, some of them stop checking where the line is. Simone was one of those people. She had been Cassidy's friend for several years and seemed to enjoy treating every relationship like a contest someone had to win. If Cassidy mentioned that I had taken care of some problem, Simone would say things like, "See, this is why husbands are useful," or, "Some men are for romance. Some are for reservations." Kira was different. She laughed sometimes, but usually a half-second late, like she was checking whether she was supposed to. I noticed the difference. I just did not do anything with it. The first time I seriously told Cassidy the jokes were getting to me, we were cleaning up after having people over. She was stacking glasses by the sink. I was wiping down the counter. I said, "Can you stop making me the punchline every time your friends are around?" She looked over at me. "What are you talking about?" "You know what I'm talking about." "No, I really don't." The comments about me paying for things, being useful, being trained, all that. She gave a small laugh. That laugh bothered me more than if she had gotten angry. "Trained," she said. "Noah, come on. I'm not asking you to praise me. I'm asking you not to humiliate me." Her face changed then, not into guilt, into irritation. "So now I need permission to joke with my own friends?" "That's not what I said." "You're making a joke sound like a crime." "I said it embarrasses me. And I'm telling you nobody else takes it that seriously." I remember standing there with a damp paper towel in my hand, wondering how a conversation about my feelings had somehow become a debate about whether I was allowed to have them. I did what I usually did. I let it go. Or, more accurately, I stopped talking about it. There is a difference. Over the next year, things got colder between us in ways that were hard to name. We were not screaming at each other. We were not sleeping in separate rooms. There was no dramatic betrayal I could point to. We were just becoming less generous with each other emotionally. Cassidy started spending more time with her friends and more time talking about how she needed space to be herself. I started staying quiet when things bothered me because every discussion seemed to end with me apologizing for the tone of a sentence I had barely raised. Money became part of that pattern too. We had our normal shared expenses and a flexible account we both used for discretionary household spending. On top of that, Cassidy was an authorized user on one of my personal cards because it had started as a convenience years earlier. For a long time, it was exactly that, a convenience. Then I began noticing charges I did not recognize. Nothing enormous. A couple hundred here, a dinner there, a reservation deposit, a beauty service, a boutique purchase. When I asked, Cassidy usually had an explanation. That was for both of us. That was for something at the house. I paid for Kira, and she sent me money. "You seriously watch every charge?" That last one became her favorite. If I asked more than one question, she would say I was monitoring her. If I reminded her that the card was still my personal account, She would tell me money should not be about power in a marriage. I started second-guessing myself. Maybe I was being too rigid. Maybe I was making small things feel bigger because the marriage itself felt off. Maybe she was right that I overthought everything. Then Cassidy suggested the weekend. It happened on a Tuesday night while we were eating takeout at the kitchen counter. She put her fork down and said, "We need a reset." I looked up. A reset. A weekend away. No friends, no noise, no chores. Just us remembering why we chose each other. That got me. Not because it was some grand romantic speech, but because it was exactly what I had wanted her to say for months. I asked, "You're serious?" "Yes." "No phones at dinner?" She smiled. "I can try." "No last-minute plans?" "God, Noah." "Yes." I smiled too. For the first time in a while, I felt hopeful. I found a nice rental for the weekend. Private patio, 2 bedrooms, kitchen, easy keypad check-in. Not extravagant, but not cheap either. I paid the deposit, saved the confirmation email, made a dinner reservation for Saturday, arranged a grocery delivery for the first evening, and agreed to a spa add-on Cassidy found through the rental service. On our shared calendar, she created the event herself. Reset weekend. All caps. I remember seeing it 2 days later and thinking, maybe we actually needed this. Then, 2 days before we were supposed to leave, Cassidy came into the bedroom while I was packing a few things. "Tiny change," she said. I stopped folding a shirt. "What kind of tiny change?" "Kira and Simone might come Friday." I stared at her. She immediately added, "Just Friday. You told me no friends." "I know. They just want to stop by." "Simone's had a rough week." "Then why are they staying at the rental?" "They're not staying." "Probably." "Cassidy." "What?" "This was supposed to be for us." "It is for us. They're just stopping by for drinks. Maybe dinner. We already have groceries for 2. So we get more." I sat on the edge of the bed. She crossed her arms. I had not even said no yet, and she already looked annoyed. Finally, I said, "I don't love this." She sighed. "I knew you were going to do this." "Do what?" "Make it a whole thing." "You changed the plan." "I added 2 people for one night." "You're acting like I invited 30. I'm acting like you asked for a private weekend, and now your friends are coming." "They are my friends, Noah." "I know. And I should not have to feel guilty for having them." "I didn't say you should. You didn't have to. That was the moment I should have held the boundary. I know that now." Instead, I looked at the half-packed bag, thought about how badly I wanted one peaceful weekend, and said, "Fine. One night." Cassidy smiled immediately and kissed my cheek. "Thank you." It was the kind of thank you you give someone after getting them to stop resisting. I noticed that too. Again, I did nothing with it. Friday afternoon, we drove out together. Kira and Simone came separately. The rental had a keypad lock, and I handled the digital check-in from my phone. The host required a card authorization for incidentals and the security deposit hold, so I entered my card information while Cassidy stood beside the kitchen island laughing at something Simone was showing her. The groceries had already arrived. I carried bags in from the car while the 3 of them opened wine. I came back for another load and heard Simone say, "See? This is why husbands are useful." Cassidy laughed. "He likes handling this stuff. Makes him feel needed." I stopped for half a second in the hallway. Kira saw me first. Her smile disappeared. Cassidy turned around and said, "There he is." I said, "Yeah." Simone lifted her glass. "Our logistics department." Cassidy laughed again. I looked at her. She looked right back at me like she was daring me to make the evening uncomfortable. So I set the bags down and said, "Anything else in the car?" She said, "Just my blue tote." I went back outside. That was still me trying to keep the peace. By the 3rd trip, I was angry at myself. Not explosive angry. The quieter kind. The kind where you begin noticing every detail because part of you has stopped participating and started observing. The patio door was cracked open when I came back with the last 2 bags. I heard Simone laughing. Then Cassidy said, "Relax, he's basically our walking debit card." I froze. Simone said something I could not fully hear. Cassidy answered louder. "He's not my husband tonight. He's the house credit card with legs." Simone burst out laughing. Kira laughed too, but it sounded uncomfortable. Then Simone said, "Girl, Then make sure the card doesn't leave. More laughter. I stood there long enough to understand that this was not one accidental line. This was a role they had discussed before. A joke with history. A version of me Cassidy had been feeding them while I sat at dinners and carried bags and paid for things and assumed everyone understood I was her husband. My phone buzzed. I pulled it out. Cassidy. Can you leave your card here and head back? We need girl time. Don't make it weird. I read it twice. Then once more. I was holding the blue tote she had asked me to bring. There was something almost funny about that. She had publicly reduced me to a payment method and then privately asked me to leave the payment method behind. For years, my instinct had been to explain. To say that hurt. To ask, why would you say that? To write 6 sentences when one would do. That night, I typed one word. No. I put the blue tote just inside the door, walked back to my car, and sat behind the wheel. My hands were shaking. I wanted to go back inside. I wanted to embarrass her. I wanted to tell Simone exactly what I thought of her. I wanted to force Cassidy to look me in the face and explain why she had invited me on a marriage reset she had apparently redesigned as a girls' weekend financed by the man she was mocking. Instead, I opened the rental confirmation. I read every line. The rental itself was already paid and non-refundable. I left it alone. I did not want to create some situation where Cassidy could claim I had locked her out in the middle of nowhere or made the stay unsafe. But the spa add-on was still cancelable. The grocery delivery scheduled for the next morning could be canceled. The dinner reservation had a deposit attached to my card. There were optional services tied to my payment method. I removed what I could. Then I called the rental support number and told them I wanted my card removed from any new incidental charges if possible. The representative explained what had already been authorized and what could still be charged. I asked for confirmation by email. I got it. A minute later, my banking app showed a notification for another attempted charge connected to the property account. I took a screenshot. Then I canceled the dinner reservation and the spa package. I sent Cassidy one message. The paid rental remains. I removed my card from new charges. Use your own card for anything else. 3 dots appeared almost immediately. Are you serious? Yes. You're seriously doing this because of a joke? I did not answer. Another message came. Noah, stop being dramatic. Then, you are embarrassing me in front of my friends. That one nearly made me laugh. I copied the text thread into a folder on my phone and saved the screenshots. I also sent Cassidy information for 2 rideshare options and the number for a local car service listed in the rental guide. Not because I thought it was my job to get her home after she told me to leave. Because I knew exactly how she would describe the night if I did not. Then I called my brother. Leo answered on the second ring. What happened? I had not said anything yet, so I asked, why are you assuming something happened? Because you never call me on Friday night unless somebody died or Cassidy did something. That got a tired laugh out of me. I told him. All of it. The weekend, the friends, the patio, the text, the cancellations. He stayed quiet for a few seconds. Then he said, okay, first thing, do not send anything angry. I know. No, you don't. I know your version of angry. It's 8 paragraphs with punctuation. I already stopped replying. Good. I want to go back there and say something. Don't. I know. Do you? I rubbed my eyes. No. Leo said, listen to me. Do not give her a meltdown she can screenshot. You don't need revenge. You need records. That sentence changed the rest of the night. I drove home. Instead of drinking, calling people, or writing messages I would regret, I made coffee at 10:30 at night and opened my accounts. I started with the flexible spending account, then my personal card. I went back 3 months. Some charges were obvious and agreed. Groceries. Household supplies. A birthday dinner. A repair we had discussed. Then there were others. A beauty service Cassidy had told me was paid with her own money. 2 restaurant charges on nights I had been working late. A boutique purchase. A deposit for some kind of private event. A transfer into an app balance I did not recognize. None of them would have destroyed us financially. That almost made it worse. This was not desperation. It was entitlement. I exported statements and started matching charges to messages and receipts. I found one text where Cassidy had written, "I'll cover this one," after asking me to pay for something earlier that day. This one had still landed on my card. I found a restaurant receipt labeled in our shared note as Friends plus Noah, except I had not been there. At 1 a.m., I stared at the screen and realized I had spent years treating every financial question like a moral test of whether I trusted my wife. Cassidy had spent those same years teaching me that asking was the offense. Around 1:30, she called. I let it ring. Then again. Then a third time. Finally, she left a voicemail. "You need to call me. This is insane. Simone's card got declined for the spa deposit, and now they're saying everything has to be rebooked. You made me look ridiculous." I saved the voicemail. A few minutes later, another message came. "My mother is going to hear about this." I stared at that one for a while. Then I set my phone face down and went to sleep in the guest room. The next morning, I woke up to 9 missed calls, 4 from Cassidy, 3 from Diane, and 2 from a number I did not recognize. Diane's voicemail was exactly what I expected. "Noah, I don't know what is going on between you two, but a good husband does not strand his wife because his feelings got hurt. Cassidy is extremely upset. Using money to teach your wife a lesson is not okay. Call her and fix this before you make it worse." I listened to it twice. Not because I enjoyed it. Because the phrasing bothered me. Using money. Teach your wife a lesson. Strand. Those were not neutral words. They sounded prepared. At breakfast, I checked the rental account. No emergency. No lockout. No safety issue. They had stayed. The only problem was that Cassidy and her friends now had to pay for their own optional plans. Around 10, another message came in. This one was from Kira. "Hey, I'm sorry." I did not answer immediately. 5 minutes later. "I laughed last night, and I shouldn't have. I don't want to be in the middle, but I also don't want to lie for her." Then, "You need to hear something." A voice message appeared. I stared at it for a long time before pressing play. It was Cassidy. I recognized the background noise from what sounded like her car. Her tone was light, casual. "Okay, don't judge me, but Friday is kind of a test. If Noah gets annoyed and still leaves the card after tonight, then I know he's ready for the bigger ask. He gets worked up, then he folds. You just have to let him feel like he had his little moment." I stopped the audio. My whole body went cold. I played it again. Cassidy continued. "I'm not asking about the loan this week. Obviously, I'm not stupid. I just need to know he's still manageable. He's been weird about money lately, like asking what stuff is for. I told Mom he's getting controlling, so she knows what's going on if he suddenly makes it an issue." There was a pause. Then she laughed. "He just needs to be trained a little longer." The message ended. I sat at the kitchen table without moving. The patio joke had hurt. This was different. This was planning. Not some cartoon villain plot. Not some secret double life. Something more ordinary and, to me, uglier. She had been testing how much disrespect I would absorb before she asked me to take on some bigger financial commitment. And before I ever refused, she had already prepared the story that refusing meant I was controlling. I messaged Kira. "What bigger ask?" She replied, "I don't know exactly." She mentioned either a loan or using part of your joint savings for something she wanted to do. I didn't think she was serious at first. Then, I think she thought we were all going to keep playing along. I asked one more question. "Did she tell you I was financially abusive before last night?" Kira took several minutes to answer. "Yes." "She said you monitor her spending and make her ask permission for money." I leaned back in the chair. That was the moment the entire marriage rearranged itself in my head. The arguments about charges. The jokes about me being the financial committee. The way Cassidy would accuse me of making money about power whenever I asked a basic question. She was not just defending herself in the moment. She had built a narrative around me. A narrative that made every future boundary look suspicious before I even said it. I saved Kira's messages and the audio. Then I called Leo again. He listened. At the end he said, "You need a lawyer." I'm not saying I'm divorcing her. I didn't say divorce her. I said talk to a lawyer. He was right. By Monday, I had a consultation with Priya. I gave her the short version and showed her the relevant account structure. She was calm in a way I badly needed. She did not tell me Cassidy was evil. She did not tell me I should file for divorce immediately. She told me what not to do. Do not drain joint funds impulsively, she said. Do not lock her out of anything she has a legal right to access. Do not threaten her. Do not post this online with names attached. If you are changing how discretionary spending works, communicate it clearly. I nodded. What about my personal card? If it is your personal credit account and she is an authorized user, you can revoke that authorization. Document when you do it. What about the flexible account? Move your personal discretionary spending out of it if you want to separate that going forward, but do not play games with money needed for agreed marital obligations. Keep records of what is shared and what is personal. Then she said, you are allowed to stop funding discretionary expenses. You are not allowed to create chaos and call it a boundary. That sentence stuck with me, so I made my boundary boring. I removed Cassidy as an authorized user from my personal card. I changed the flexible spending arrangement so only agreed shared expenses came out of it. I did not touch our obligations. I did not empty accounts. I did not cancel utilities. I did not do anything dramatic. I sent Cassidy a written notice with exactly what was changing. Effective today, my personal card will no longer be available for your discretionary charges. Shared household expenses will continue through the existing shared account by agreement. We need to review recent charges together. I will not discuss this through insults or accusations. Her response came 3 minutes later. This is financial abuse. I did not reply. Then, you are proving everything I told people. I still did not reply. Then, you are punishing me because your ego got bruised. I typed a response, deleted it, and called Leo. He laughed when I told him. You wrote a paragraph, didn't you? Almost. Delete it. I did. Good. That evening, I sent one sentence. I'll discuss facts in person. I won't argue with a story you invented. That was it. The rest of the week was miserable. Cassidy came home Sunday night from the rental furious. Not heartbroken. Not embarrassed about what she had said. Furious that I had changed the rules without asking her permission. She walked into the kitchen, dropped her bag by the door, and said, "Do you have any idea what you did to me?" I was sitting at the table. Yes. No, you don't. You told me to leave my card and go home. Oh my God, Noah. It was a joke. The text wasn't. We were having a girls' night. During our reset weekend. You are obsessed with wording. I'm interested in facts. She stared at me. Then her eyes narrowed. Did Kira talk to you? I did not answer. That answered it for her. She laughed once, sharply. Unbelievable. What is? That she would get involved. You involved her. You have no idea what you heard. I heard your voice. She folded her arms. So now you're collecting evidence against your own wife? That line told me more than she intended. I said, why would the truth feel like evidence against you? She looked away. For 1 second, I thought she might finally sit down and talk to me. Instead, she said, I'm not doing this with you when you're in this mindset. Then she went upstairs. We slept separately after that. Not as some dramatic declaration. She took the bedroom. I took the guest room. It felt less like a separation at first, and more like the physical version of what had already been happening for months. Then Diane started calling. I answered once. She did not ask what happened. She told me. According to Cassidy, I had invited her to a romantic weekend, gotten jealous because her friends came by, stormed out after hearing a joke, canceled everything, and then frozen her out financially to scare her into behaving. When Diane finished, I said, Is that what she told you? Yes. Did she tell you she asked me to leave my card behind and go home? There was a pause. She said something was said in frustration. Did she tell you she had already been telling people I was financially abusive before I changed anything? Another pause. Noah, I'm not going to get dragged into every detail of your marriage. You call me to accuse me based on the details Cassidy gave you. That is not fair. I agree. She got quiet. Then she said, You need to work this out privately. I almost laughed. Cassidy had already made it public with her friends and family. But I said, that would have been my preference too. I ended the call. A few days later, Diane invited us to dinner. I did not want to go. Then Cassidy told me her mother deserved to hear my side if I was going to keep acting like this. The irony was almost impressive. I asked Cassidy, "Are you planning to tell the whole story?" "I'm not afraid of your version." That made my decision easy. I brought one printed page. Not a giant folder. Not a presentation. One page with the relevant weekend charges. What had been agreed, what had been added, what was canceled, what remained paid. Everything else stayed on my phone. The text, the cancellation emails, the rental confirmation, the bank notification, the voicemail. Leo's last advice before dinner was simple. Do not argue with her interpretation. Stick to what happened. So I did. Dinner started painfully normal. Diane had made too much food, as usual. Cassidy sat beside her instead of beside me. One of Cassidy's relatives asked about work, and I gave a short answer. Somebody talked about a vacation. Then Diane put down her fork. "So," she said, looking at me, "are we going to pretend nothing happened?" Cassidy exhaled beside her. "Mom." "No," Diane said. "I want to understand how Noah thinks this is acceptable." I set my glass down. Cassidy looked at me with that expression she used when she believed she had the room. Soft eyes, tired face, controlled voice. "I already told you," she said. He got upset at the rental and left. Then he started canceling things and cutting off my access to money. Diane looked at me. A good husband does not strand his wife because his feelings got hurt. I didn't strand her. Cassidy scoffed. "You left. You told me to." "I did not tell you to abandon me." I pulled out my phone. Cassidy saw it and said, "Seriously?" I looked at her. "Do you want to tell the whole story, or should I?" Her face changed. Diane said, "What does that mean?" Cassidy turned to her mother. "He does this. He tries to make everything sound like some courtroom cross-examination." "I'm not cross-examining anyone," I said. "I'm correcting the record." "You're threatening me in front of my family?" "No." I opened the text. Then I slid the phone across the table to Diane. She read it silently. "Can you leave your card here and head back? We need girl time. Don't make it weird." Diane looked at Cassidy. "Did you send this?" Cassidy sighed. "Yes, but..." "Did you ask him to leave his card?" "That's not the point." Diane's voice got quieter. "It is exactly the point." Cassidy looked at me. "You knew what I meant." "I did," I said. "You wanted me gone and my money to stay." That is such a disgusting way to twist it. I put the printed page on the table. This is what was actually canceled. Diane picked it up. I pointed to the lines. The rental stayed paid. I did not cancel the place. I did not lock anyone out. I canceled the spa add-on, the next grocery delivery, and the dinner reservation. I removed my personal card from new incidental charges where the rental allowed it. Cassidy said, "You did it to humiliate me." "I did it because you told your friends I was a credit card with legs and then asked me to leave the card behind. You were still stuck on one joke." "No." I opened the rental email. "I also sent you transportation options. You were not stranded." Diane read the screen. Cassidy's voice rose. "Why are you acting like sending me a rideshare link makes you some hero?" "I'm not." "Then what is this?" "This is me correcting the claim that I abandoned you somewhere with no way home." Nobody else at the table was talking now. Cassidy looked around the room and realized the tone had shifted. So she moved to the next argument. "This is what I mean," she said. "He keeps records of everything. Every charge. Every text. This is controlling." I looked at Diane. Then back at Cassidy. "Do you want me to play the voicemail?" Cassidy went completely still. That was the first moment Diane looked genuinely alarmed. "What voicemail?" Cassidy said, "Noah." I waited. She shook her head. "You're really going to do this? You told people I was financially abusive before I changed anything." I said I felt controlled. "You said more than that." Diane asked, "What voicemail?" I played only the relevant part. Cassidy's voice filled the quiet room. "Friday is kind of a test. If Noah gets annoyed and still leaves the card after tonight, then I know he's ready for the bigger ask. He gets worked up, then he folds." I stopped it there. Nobody moved. Cassidy's face was red. Then she said, "That was private." I almost could not believe it. Not false. Not edited. Private. Diane stared at her. "What bigger ask?" Cassidy said nothing. I played the next short section. I'm not asking about the loan this week. I just need to know he's still manageable. I told Mom he's getting controlling, so she knows what's going on if he suddenly makes it an issue. Then I stopped it again. Diane looked like someone had slapped her. Cassidy. Cassidy pushed back from the table. I cannot believe you're letting him do this. Diane did not look at me. She kept looking at her daughter. Did you tell me he was controlling because you were planning to ask him for money? It wasn't like that. What was it like? Cassidy turned toward me instead. You went through months of charges. Yes. You contacted a lawyer. Yes. You cut off my card. My personal card. You are proving my point. No, I said. I'm proving mine. She laughed bitterly. What point? That any time I ask a financial question, you call it control. Any time I say no, you call it punishment. And now I know you were preparing people to believe that before I even knew there was a bigger financial request coming. Diane asked, what was the loan for? Cassidy clenched her jaw. I did not answer for her. I did not know. That mattered. I was not going to turn suspicion into fact just because I finally had the room. Cassidy said, it was just an idea. What idea? Diane asked. A project. What project? Mom, stop. Diane leaned back in her chair. For the first time since I had known her, she looked embarrassed to be on Cassidy's side. I defended you, she said quietly, because I believed you told me everything. Cassidy's eyes filled with tears. That might sound like the moment everyone turned against her. It was not. Real families are messier than that. Diane still loved her daughter. One relative stared at the table. Another looked at me, then away. Nobody applauded. Nobody gave a speech. There was just a long, uncomfortable silence where Cassidy's version of me no longer fit the facts on the table. And that was enough. I said, I'm not here to win. Cassidy laughed under her breath. Sure. I'm here because you told people I financially abandoned you, and that isn't what happened. She wiped at her eyes. You canceled everything. I canceled optional things I was paying for after you told me to leave. You were angry. Yes. That surprised her. I continued. I was furious. I wanted to humiliate you back. I did not. I called my brother. I saved the records. I spoke to a lawyer. I made changes to my personal accounts. The rental stayed paid. Shared obligations stayed paid. Diane looked at me. You spoke to a lawyer? Yes. Cassidy made a sound like that was the final betrayal. You see, she said, that is insane. No, I said. What would have been insane is reacting without advice after learning my wife was already telling people I was abusive while testing whether I would keep paying after being humiliated. Cassidy stood up. So what now? You put me on some financial probation. No. I kept my voice level. No access to my personal card. Shared expenses by agreement. Full transparency on the flexible account. Counseling if we are going to try to stay married. No more jokes about me being useful, trained, a wallet, or anything like it in front of your friends. And you correct the story you told people about that weekend. She stared at me. You want me to publicly confess? I want you to tell the same people you told I financially abused you that I did not cancel the rental, did not leave you without transportation, and only removed my card from optional and new charges after you told me to leave it behind. That is humiliating. I nodded. Yes, the truth can feel that way when the lie made you look better. Diane closed her eyes for a second. Cassidy said, you are punishing me for one joke. I looked at her for a long time. No, I stopped pretending the joke wasn't our marriage. Nobody said anything after that. I left before dessert. Cassidy stayed. That night, she did not come home. I did not ask where she slept. The next morning, Kira messaged me. I'm stepping back from her for a while. I'm sorry, I laughed. I told her I appreciated her sending the voicemail, but I was not interested in making her choose sides. That was true. I did not need Team Noah. I needed distance from people who thought my marriage was entertainment. Simone disappeared almost immediately. Not in some dramatic way. She just stopped showing up once free plans stopped appearing. A week later, Cassidy came into the kitchen holding her phone and said, Simone wants me to send her money for the rental stuff. What rental stuff? The things she paid for after you canceled everything. I looked at her. Cassidy's mouth tightened. Do not. I didn't say anything. You were thinking it. I was. The next weekend, Kira told Cassidy she would not be joining another trip until things cooled down. Diane stopped calling me to defend her daughter. She did not become my ally. She just stopped assuming silence meant guilt. That change alone was noticeable. At home, Cassidy and I barely spoke for several days beyond logistics. Then one night, she came to the guest room doorway. Are you really going to keep sleeping in here? For now. How long is for now? Until I know what we're doing. I already said I'm sorry. She had said, I'm sorry you got hurt. That was not the same thing. I said, you apologized for the joke. What else do you want? The truth. Her eyes narrowed. I have told you the truth. No. You told Kira the weekend was a test. You told your mother I was controlling before I knew there was any bigger request. You charged personal things to my card and called me controlling when I asked about them. She leaned against the doorframe. So you think I was using you. I think you got comfortable with me covering things. That is not the same. You called me a credit card with legs. She looked away. I was showing off. I know. That answer hit harder than if I had yelled. She looked back at me. I said, that's the problem. You wanted your friends to think you could disrespect me and I would still pay. Her voice softened. I didn't think you'd hear it. That doesn't help. I know. For the first time, she sounded like she actually did. But accountability lasted about 30 seconds before she said, you still took it too far. I almost smiled. There it was. The old pattern. Her action. My reaction. Somehow my reaction became the main event. I said, what would have been the correct amount of consequence? That's not what I mean. Then tell me what you mean. You changed everything overnight. I changed my personal card access. You made me feel like I had to ask permission for money. You have your own money. That is not the point. No, it is. She went quiet. Then she said, marriage is supposed to be shared. I agree. Then why are you separating things? Because you were using shared to mean I was not allowed to say no. She pushed away from the doorframe. This is impossible. It does not have to be. What do you want from me? Counseling. Transparent finances. No more public disrespect. Correct the story. And if I don't? I looked at her. Then we need lawyers more than we need another conversation. Her face changed. For once, she did not tell me I was being dramatic. She left the doorway without another word. We started counseling 2 weeks later. I am not going to pretend the first session fixed anything. It was awful. Cassidy spent half of it explaining why she felt watched. I spent part of it realizing I had built years of resentment while calling it patience. The counselor asked me why I had tolerated jokes that clearly bothered me. I said, because I thought choosing peace was more mature than reacting. Then I heard how that sounded. Peace. I had not created peace. I had created a system where the cost of peace was always paid by me. Not in dollars. In silence. The financial separation stayed in place. That was non-negotiable. We reviewed shared expenses weekly for a while. Not because I wanted to supervise Cassidy. Because if we were going to keep using words like partnership, I wanted our actual behavior to match. Cassidy eventually admitted the bigger ask had been a loan connected to a business idea she and another person had been discussing. She had not signed anything. She had not taken the money. But she had been planning to ask me to co-sign or use part of our savings. She said she was afraid I would say no. I asked, so you decided to prove I shouldn't? She looked down. I wanted to know how hard you would push back. That is not how you ask your husband for support. I know. Do you? That one made her angry. But she did not have an answer. A few days later, she sent messages to the people she had told I had financially abused her. I did not dictate the wording. I only told her the correction had to be factual. She wrote that she had described the rental incident unfairly, that I had not canceled the paid lodging or left her without transportation, and that I had removed my personal card from optional charges after she told me to go home. She did not sound thrilled. I did not care. Truth does not require enthusiasm. Some people apologized to me. Some did not. Simone never did. That was fine. I had no interest in rebuilding anything with her. Diane called me after Cassidy corrected the story. Her voice was quieter than usual. I owe you an apology. I said nothing. She continued. I should have asked you what happened before I called you a bad husband. I appreciate that. I was trying to protect my daughter. I know. That does not make it right. No. There was another pause. Then she said, I also should not have assumed you being quiet meant you had nothing to say. That one stayed with me. Because she was not the only person who had made that assumption. So had Cassidy. So had I. Months passed. Cassidy and I did not magically become happy. There were good days. There were ugly conversations. There were moments when I saw the woman I had married and moments when I wondered if staying even temporarily was just another version of my old habit. The difference was that I stopped making decisions solely to avoid conflict. If a charge looked wrong, I asked. If a joke crossed a line, I said so once. If she tried to turn a boundary into an accusation, I did not spend an hour defending my character. I kept the legal consultation active and understood what separation would look like if counseling failed. Cassidy knew that. Not as a threat, as reality. One evening, after a particularly tense counseling session, she texted me from the bedroom while I was in the kitchen. I didn't think you'd actually stop covering for me. I stared at the message. It was probably the most honest thing she had said since the rental. I typed back. That was the problem. She did not reply. I set the phone down and finished washing the 2 glasses in the sink. Nothing about my life felt cinematic in that moment. There was no victory speech, no audience, no dramatic exit. Just a quiet house, separate finances, a marriage under conditions instead of assumptions, and the knowledge that if those conditions failed, I was prepared to leave. For years, I had confused being patient with being endlessly available. I am still patient. I still believe marriage should include generosity. But generosity without respect is not partnership. And I will never again hand someone unlimited access to me, financially or emotionally, just because keeping the peace feels easier than saying no. If you like the stories, don't forget to leave a comment and support the channel by subscribing. See you in the upcoming stories.